I saw him standing on my porch on a Tuesday morning in March, and my heart literally stopped. I'm not exaggerating. I felt it skip, then hammer against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. 7 years. It had been 7 years since Brandon left, and here he was, older, thinner, with gray creeping into his dark hair, holding a coffee from the Starbucks on 5th Street like he was just stopping by to chat about the weather. I was in my bathrobe. My hair was in a messy bun on top of my head. I hadn't put on makeup yet, and there he was, looking like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, which I'd later realize he absolutely had. "Ashley," he said, and just hearing my name in his voice made something inside me snap. I know I have no right to be here. I know I probably shouldn't have come, but I had to see you. I had to see if maybe we could just talk for 5 minutes. I was about to slam the door in his face. I was about to tell him exactly where he could shove his 5 minutes. But then I heard Emma's footsteps thundering down the stairs, and I turned around to see my 7-year-old daughter, still in her bluey pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes as she came down to ask me what was for breakfast. That's when everything shifted. 3 years earlier, life had been exactly what I'd always wanted it to be. Not perfect. I'm not one of those people who pretends life is perfect, but good. Solid. The kind of good that feels earned. We lived in a cute 3-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Portland, the kind with the white shutters and the wraparound porch that made neighbors smile when they drove past. Brandon had bought it for us in 2016, right after we found out I was pregnant. He'd stood in the kitchen, the one with the terrible linoleum we swore we'd renovate, and spun me around, lifted me off my feet, and said, "This is it. This is home. This is where we raise our daughter." I was 26 years old and thought I had everything figured out. Brandon worked for a tech startup downtown, making decent money. Not rich guy money, but enough that I could stay home with Emma during her first years. He'd come home around 6, kick off his shoes by the door, and immediately ask where his girls were. He'd scoop Emma up and toss her in the air until she screamed with joy, and then he'd kiss me like he'd been waiting all day to do it. Because he had been. That's who he was. The guy who loved his family out loud, without apology. We'd have dinner together, something I'd cooked. Nothing fancy, pasta, chicken, whatever was on sale at Fred Meyer. Brandon would ask about Emma's day. Did she learn her letters? Did she play nice with the other kids at her playgroup? Was she being kind? And then he'd ask about me. Really ask. Like my day mattered as much as his. "How are you doing, Ash?" he'd say. Really doing? No one had ever asked me that before Brandon. No one had ever cared enough. My parents were good people, but they were busy. My dad's an accountant, my mom's a nurse, and they worked hard to give me and my brother everything. But asking how I was really doing? That wasn't their style. They showed love through action, paying for college, helping with a down payment, not through conversation. Brandon was different. He asked. He listened. He remembered things I'd mentioned weeks earlier and brought them up. When I was anxious about money, he'd sit with me at the kitchen table and walk through our budget, line by line, showing me we were going to be okay. When my brother got divorced and it made me question whether love was even real, Brandon took my face in his hands and said, "Our love is real. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere." God, I believed him so completely. Emma was born on a rainy September evening in 2017. Brandon cut the cord. He cried. I'd never seen him cry before, and it made me love him even more. He held our daughter like she was made of spun glass, and he whispered to her, "Hi, baby girl, it's Dad. I'm going to love you for the rest of my life. I'm never going to let you down." He meant it. I know he did. Those early years were hard, sleepless nights, postpartum anxiety that I didn't realize was anxiety until much later, the constant pressure of keeping a tiny human alive. But Brandon was there. He took the 3 a.m. feedings when he could. He changed diapers without complaining. He encouraged me to go out with my friends, to get my hair done, to take time for myself. He was the husband from the movies, the one you don't think actually exists. By 2019, life was really good. Emma was 2 and had started talking in full sentences. She called me Mama and Brandon Dada, and those words made him cry happy tears every single time. We'd talk about having another baby, maybe a boy. Brandon wanted 4 kids, maybe 5. A whole basketball team, he'd joke. I wanted whatever he wanted, honestly. I was that woman. I know how that sounds. But when you grow up without feeling like you matter much, and then someone makes you feel like you're the center of his entire world, you tend to say yes to his dreams. We'd have dinner parties. My best friend Jennifer would come over with her husband, and we'd eat my lasagna and drink wine and talk about life. Brandon would tell stories that made everyone laugh. He was charming. Not in a sleazy way, in a genuine way. He actually liked people. He asked them questions and remembered their answers. Jennifer used to say, "You're lucky. Brandon's one of the good ones." I knew it. I never took it for granted. Then, in early 2020, everything started to feel different. Not in a big way at first, just small things. He started staying late at work more often. Project deadline, he'd text. I'd see him come home at 9 or 10, already exhausted, and I'd heat up his dinner while he sat in the living room with Emma, who was barely awake, so he could say goodnight. He stopped asking how my day was going. He'd come home and go straight to his phone, scrolling through emails or messages. When I tried to tell him something, like how Emma had figured out how to climb onto the kitchen counter and given me a heart attack, he'd say, "That's great, babe," without looking up. His phone started staying in his pocket. He'd get texts and quickly silence them. Once, I caught a glimpse of his screen when he laid it on the kitchen counter, and I saw a notification from someone named M. Just an initial. My stomach did a weird flip, but I told myself I was being paranoid and insecure. Still, I mentioned it to Jennifer one afternoon when we were having coffee at her place while the kids napped. "Is everything okay with you and Brandon?" she asked. And the fact that she asked it so gently made me start crying. "I don't know," I said. "I think so. He's just been weird, distant. Probably nothing. Probably the startup stuff." Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. "You know you can tell me anything, right? If something's going on, I'm here." I promised her I would, but I didn't really want to admit that something might be wrong. I didn't want to be the woman whose husband was pulling away. That happened to other people, not to us. Then one night in late March, Brandon said he had to go into the office on a Saturday morning to handle something urgent. It was unusual. The startup was pretty flexible about remote work, but I didn't question it. I told him to go, that Emma and I would be fine. He left at 8 in the morning. By noon, I got a text from my friend Rachel, who works at the same startup. "Hey, is Brandon sick? I haven't seen him in the office today, and I'm trying to figure out who's covering the merchant account." My hands went cold. I didn't text him right away. Instead, I called the startup's main number and asked if Brandon was there. The receptionist said no, he wasn't on the schedule for that day. I thanked her and hung up before she could ask why I was asking. Then I called Brandon. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Where are you?" He texted back 20 minutes later. Had to run an errand, back soon. An errand on a Saturday morning that required him to lie about going to the office. When he came home at 2 o'clock, I didn't say anything. I was scared of what I'd find out if I asked. I was scared of being the kind of woman who accuses her husband of cheating based on a text from a coworker. I was scared of ruining something that, deep down, I already knew was broken. So I smiled when he walked in. I asked how his office work went. He said it was productive, kissed the top of my head, and went to play with Emma. And that's when I knew. That's when the first domino fell, and I couldn't stop it. I didn't confront him that day, or the next day, or the day after that. Instead, I became someone I didn't recognize. I became a detective in my own marriage. I started checking his credit card statements online. Thank God we had joint accounts. at least for that. Most charges were normal: gas, groceries, his lunch at the deli by the office. But then there were others. A hotel charge in downtown Portland on a Friday night, when he said he was working late at the startup. Dinner for two at a restaurant called Vespertine, which I'd never been to. A charge at a jewelry store. A jewelry store, Ashley, a place I'd never dragged him to, never asked him to go to. My hands shook as I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, Emma watching Bluey in the living room, completely oblivious to the fact that her mother's entire world was imploding. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to tell. I couldn't tell Jennifer. If I said it out loud to her, it would become real in a way I wasn't ready for. I couldn't tell my parents because my mom would immediately call a divorce attorney and start the paperwork before I'd even finished explaining. I couldn't tell Brandon because I didn't want to see his face when he lied to me. I was fairly certain I already knew he was lying, and I didn't think I could survive hearing the denial, the excuses, the slow-motion death of everything I'd believed about us. So I did what I did best. I pretended. I smiled when he came home. I made dinner. I asked about his day in a voice that didn't betray anything. I let him kiss the top of my head while I stirred pasta sauce and felt like I was going to throw up. And then, in April, I found out I was pregnant. I took the test on a random Tuesday morning because I'd been feeling nauseated and my period was late. I peed on the stick in our master bathroom while Brandon was in the shower, and those 2 pink lines appeared like a punch to the stomach. Pregnant. Again. A baby. Our baby. I sat on the edge of the tub and cried. Not happy tears. Not the kind of tears I'd cried when I found out I was pregnant with Emma. These were terrified, desperate tears. Because I was carrying another child with a man who was sleeping with someone else, and I had no idea how to stop any of it. When Brandon came out of the shower, I was holding the test. I couldn't hide it. He saw my face, saw what I was holding, and for a moment, just a moment, he looked genuinely happy. He scooped me up and spun me around, and he said, "Ash, that's incredible. That's amazing. We're having another baby." And I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the test at him. I wanted to ask him who he was celebrating with when he was buying jewelry for someone else. Instead, I let him hold me. I let him think I was happy. I let him believe that we were still okay. That night, I called Jennifer. I didn't tell her everything. I couldn't say the words out loud yet. But I asked her if she could watch Emma the next morning. I needed to run some errands, I said. She agreed immediately, no questions asked. That was Jennifer. That was what real friendship looked like. The next morning, I drove downtown. I found the jewelry store on 5th Avenue, the one from the credit card statement. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I walked in, and a woman with bleached blonde hair and acrylic nails looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for something," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. "My husband bought something here, recently. I'd like to see it." The woman's face went carefully neutral. "I'm not sure I can help with that without more information." "It was from a man," I said. "Tall, dark hair, works at a startup downtown. He came in probably in the last few weeks." The woman looked uncomfortable. "I can't really discuss. He's my husband," I said. "We're having a baby, our second one. And I need to know if he bought something here for someone else." The woman stared at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I remember him. He bought a ring. A pretty nice one. Engagement ring." The store tilted. The ground shifted beneath my feet. I gripped the edge of the counter to stay standing. "When?" I managed to ask. "About 3 weeks ago," she said. 3 weeks ago, while I was home with our daughter, while I was carrying his baby. 3 weeks ago, he bought an engagement ring for someone else. I don't remember leaving the store. I remember sitting in my car in a parking lot, my hands on the steering wheel, not moving. I remember my phone buzzing with a text from Jennifer. "Emma's good. We're at the park. Take your time." Take your time. As if I had time. As if time was something I could control or manage or understand anymore. I drove home in a daze. I went to the garage, to Brandon's toolbox, to the place where he kept his keys to the startup office. He had a key card for the building. I grabbed it. I also grabbed his laptop from the desk in our home office, the one he thought I didn't know the password to. But I did. He'd written it on a post-it note and stuck it to the monitor. Emma 2017, our daughter's name. That's what he'd used as his password while he was destroying our lives. I opened the laptop. It took me 3 tries to get into the email. My hands were shaking so badly I kept hitting the wrong letters. But I got in. And I scrolled through his inbox, and everything I'd suspected, everything I'd tried not to believe, was there in black and white. Emails from someone named Morgan, hundreds of them. Flirting emails, sexting emails, plans to meet at the hotel, conversations about when we can finally be together, and when I tell Ashley. When he tells me, not if, when. There were photos. I won't describe them in detail, but they were the kind of photos that a man sends to a woman he's completely in love with. The kind of intimate, vulnerable photos that he'd taken for her, and only her. I scrolled back further. The emails went back 8 months. 8 months. He'd been seeing her since before I was even pregnant with this second baby. Since before I'd started suspecting something was wrong. And then I found a draft email, dated 2 weeks ago, unsent. "I'm going to leave Ashley," it said. "I know it's going to hurt her, and I know it's going to hurt Emma, but I can't keep living this lie. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to marry you. I'm going to talk to a divorce attorney next week and figure out custody and support. It's going to be complicated, but we'll figure it out. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you." I closed the laptop. I sat there in my home office, in the house Brandon had bought for us, surrounded by pictures of our family, and I felt something inside me break into pieces so small they could never be put back together. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jennifer. "Emma wants to know if you can pick her up by noon. She has her playdate at 1. I looked at the time. It was 10:47 a.m. I texted back, "On my way." Then I took Brandon's laptop and his key card, and I put them in my purse. And I drove to Jennifer's house to pick up my daughter, the one he'd promised he'd never let down. And I tried very hard not to cry in front of her while she chattered about the ducks at the park. When we got home, Emma asked if Dada was coming home soon. I told her yes, probably around 6. She seemed satisfied with that answer. She asked if she could have a snack, and I made her apple slices with peanut butter, and we sat at the kitchen table like everything was normal. But nothing would ever be normal again. At 5:45 p.m., I called my mom. When she answered, I said, "Mom, I need you to come get Emma, right now. Can you do that?" "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. She knew my voice. She knew something was catastrophically wrong. "I can't explain right now," I said. "Just please come." She was at my house in 20 minutes. She didn't ask questions. She just took Emma, kissed the top of her head, and said, "I'll keep her as long as you need." At 6:15 p.m., Brandon opened the front door. He was smiling. He had his work bag over his shoulder, and he was already loosening his tie. "Hey, babe," he said. "Where's Emma? I was hoping to—" "I know about Morgan," I said. The color drained from his face. I watched it happen in real time. The smile disappeared. His jaw went slack. His hand dropped from his tie. "Ashley, I can explain," he started. "You bought her an engagement ring," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised me. I felt like I was floating somewhere above my body, watching this scene play out. "You've been sleeping with her for 8 months. You're planning to leave me. And I'm pregnant." He stared at me. His mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish, gasping for air on dry land. How did you... Your laptop, I said. Your email. Your draft letter to her. It's all very clear. He sat down heavily on the couch. He put his face in his hands. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, he said, his voice muffled. I was going to tell you. I was going to... When? I asked. When were you going to tell me? After you married her? After you abandoned our daughter? After I had this baby? Ashley, I love you, he said, and he looked up at me and his eyes were wet. I do. I love you. But I'm not in love with you anymore. I haven't been for a long time. And I met Morgan, and she makes me feel alive again. I know it's wrong. I know I'm destroying everything, but I can't keep pretending. I stood there in the living room of the house he'd bought for us, looking at a man I didn't recognize. And I realized something. I had been so busy trying to hold on to a life that was already gone that I hadn't noticed I was drowning. Pack a bag, I said quietly. You need to leave. Ashley, now, I said, before Emma comes back, before I have to explain to her why her father is breaking our family apart. Pack a bag and leave, or I'm calling the police and telling them you're trespassing. He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my face stopped him. He went upstairs. I heard him moving around in our bedroom, throwing clothes into a duffel bag. 10 minutes later, he came back down, bag in hand, looking lost and small. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We need to talk about logistics. Child support, custody, the house. I don't want to talk to you tomorrow, I said. I don't want to talk to you for a very long time. I want you to leave, and I want you to think about what you've done. Really think about it. Because you didn't just betray me, Brandon. You abandoned your daughter. You walked away from a child who loves you more than anything in this world, and you did it for someone you've known for 8 months. He flinched. Good. I'm going to talk to a lawyer, I continued. And we're going to figure out custody and support through the courts, not through phone calls or texts. And you're going to pay for this. Not just financially. You're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that you broke your daughter's heart because you were too selfish and too cowardly to face your problems like an adult. He left without saying anything else. I watched him put his bag in his car, watched him drive away, and then I locked the door and went upstairs to my bedroom and lay down on the bed we'd shared, the bed where he'd promised to love me forever. And I cried until I had no tears left. That was April 2020. Emma was 2.5 years old. I was 7 weeks pregnant. And I was completely alone. Character count, 9,847. The next 4 years were the hardest of my life, but they were also the ones that made me who I needed to be. After Brandon left in April 2020, I didn't leave the house for 3 weeks, except to go to doctor's appointments. I was terrified of running into him, terrified of people knowing, terrified that I'd somehow made this happen by not being enough. My mom practically moved in. She cooked, she cleaned, she took Emma to her playdates, and she didn't ask me to explain or justify anything. She just showed up. I hired a divorce attorney named Linda Martinez, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a reputation for not taking any crap from deadbeat fathers. Our first meeting was in her office downtown, and I brought Brandon's laptop with the emails, the draft letter, everything. Linda read through it all, and when she looked up at me, her expression was pure, cold fury. "This is good," she said. "This is very good. He's documented his own infidelity, his intent to abandon the child, everything we need. Did he sign a prenup?" "No," I said. "Even better," she said. "We're going to take this house. We're going to take his 401k, and we're going to make sure that Emma gets every penny of child support she's legally entitled to." I didn't feel triumphant hearing that. I felt hollowed out. I didn't want to take anything from Brandon, except maybe an apology. But I had a baby on the way, and a 2-year-old who kept asking where Dada was, and I wasn't in a position to be generous. 7 weeks later, I gave birth to Olivia on a hot July afternoon. She had dark hair like Brandon, like Emma, and when they put her on my chest, I cried so hard I could barely see her. My mom held my hand and whispered, "You're so strong. You're going to be okay." I wasn't sure I believed her, but I wanted to. Brandon didn't come to the hospital. He sent flowers, actual flowers, like that made up for anything, and a text saying he wanted to set up a custody schedule. Linda advised me not to respond until we had something on paper. So I didn't. I sat in the hospital with my newborn daughter and my 2-year-old, and I let my mom take pictures while Brandon was somewhere else, probably with Morgan, probably planning a life that didn't include any of us. The custody agreement took 2 months to finalize. Brandon fought hard, not for full custody, but to avoid paying what he was supposed to pay. Linda sat across from his attorney in a conference room, and she laid out the numbers. Emma and Olivia were his children. He'd made $85,000 a year when he left. In Oregon, that meant he owed $1,200 a month in child support, minimum, plus health insurance and half of all child care costs. He argued he should pay less. He said he wanted more custody time. He said a lot of things. But the judge ruled in our favor, and the order was written. He would pay $1,200 a month. He would have Emma every other weekend and 2 weeks in summer. He would split all major medical and educational expenses. He agreed to it. He signed the papers. And then he did something I'll never forget. He disappeared. Not completely. He paid the first month's child support. But then the checks stopped coming. In September 2020, I got a notice from the Child Support Enforcement Office saying that Brandon was in arrears by $1,200. By December, he was behind $4,800. By the time Emma turned 3 in September 2021, he owed $18,000. I called him. I texted him. I had Linda send him letters. Nothing. He'd quit his job at the startup, and his new address on file was an apartment in Seattle. He'd moved to Washington with Morgan. New state, new life. No intention of paying for the children he'd left behind. "We can go after him," Linda said. "We can have the Washington State Child Support Office enforce the order. We can put a hold on his driver's license, garnish his wages when he gets a job. But it takes time." Time. That's what I didn't have. I had bills. I had a mortgage on a house I was terrified of losing. I had 2 kids who needed food and diapers and childcare. I had a medical school student loan that had been deferred but would eventually come due. I had a credit score that was slowly circling the drain because I was trying to keep everything afloat on one income that wasn't nearly enough. So I did what a lot of single mothers do. I adapted. I went back to work when Olivia was 3 months old. I found a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm, ironic, I know, that paid $38,000 a year. It wasn't enough, but combined with a small child support payment my mom insisted on giving me every month, and food stamps, and help from the state, I could keep the lights on. Emma started preschool. Olivia went to a daycare that cost more than my rent. I worked 9 to 5, picked up the kids, came home, made dinner, gave baths, put them to bed, and then sat on my couch and cried because I was so tired I couldn't remember what it felt like to not be exhausted. Jennifer came over one Friday night after Emma was in bed. She brought wine and takeout from Thai Palace, and she sat with me in my kitchen and let me vent for 2 hours while Olivia slept in her bassinet. "Have you heard from him at all?" she asked. "No," I said. "He sends Emma a birthday card every year, signed by him and Morgan. She's Morgan now, by the way. He married her." "Jesus," Jennifer said. "Yeah," I said. "He left me while I was pregnant, moved to another state, didn't pay child support, and married the woman he cheated with. And the worst part is that I'm still angry about it. I thought I'd get to this point where I'd just feel nothing, but I'm still so angry I could spit. You should be angry, Jennifer said. He's a piece of shit. I just want Emma to understand that it's not her fault, I said. That she didn't do anything wrong. That her father is just a selfish coward who doesn't deserve to be her father. She will, Jennifer said. You're teaching her that every single day. Over the next 3 years, I built a life. It wasn't the life I'd planned. I didn't have the husband or the big house or the feeling of safety that I'd had before. But I had my daughters, and I had my job, and I had friends like Jennifer who showed up when I needed them. I also had rage, a lot of rage, the kind of rage that keeps you awake at night, the kind that makes you fantasize about confrontations that will never happen. I imagined running into Brandon at the grocery store and telling him exactly what I thought of him. I imagined him coming back and begging for forgiveness, and me telling him it was too late. I imagined a lot of things that made me feel powerful for about 30 seconds before reality crashed back in. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March 2024, 7 years after he left, Brandon showed up on my porch. I didn't recognize him at first. His hair was gray, his face was lined. He looked like he'd been hollowed out from the inside. He was wearing a Starbucks cup like a shield, and his hands were shaking. "Ashley," he said, "I know I have no right to be here. I know I probably shouldn't have come. But I had to see you. I had to see if maybe we could just talk for 5 minutes." And I was about to slam the door in his face when Emma came downstairs in her bluey pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and everything stopped. She was 7 years old now. She had his dark eyes, his smile, his stubborn chin. She looked exactly like a little version of him, and when she saw him standing on the porch, her entire face lit up. "Dada," she said, the word coming out small and confused and full of hope that broke my heart. Brandon's face crumpled. He looked like he was going to cry. "Hi, baby," he said, his voice shaking. "Hi, Emma. It's been a long time." I grabbed Emma's hand. "Go back upstairs," I said, my voice steady even though I was shaking. "Get Olivia. Tell her to turn on the TV in my room. Now." "But Mama," Emma started. "Now," I said, not unkindly. She went, confused but obedient. Once I heard the sounds of Olivia waking up, of Emma getting her, I turned back to Brandon. "You need to leave," I said, "right now." "Ashley, please," he said. "I need to talk to you. I need to explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said. "You abandoned your daughter. You didn't pay child support for 7 years. You married the woman you cheated with, and now you show up on my porch expecting what exactly? Forgiveness? A reunion? You don't get either of those things." "I'm not the same person I was," he said. "I've changed. I know that doesn't matter to you, but I had to try. I had to see if there was any way to make things right with Emma, with both of them." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Make things right?" I said. "Brandon, you can't make this right. You left when Emma was 2.5 years old. She spent the next 7 years asking when you were coming to get her. Do you know what that does to a child? Do you have any idea what you've done?" He flinched. Good. "I had to figure out how to explain to her that her father didn't love her enough to stay," I continued. "I had to be the one to tell her that she wasn't worth fighting for. I had to watch her cry on her 6th birthday because she thought maybe you'd show up, and you didn't. I had to sit with her while she told her therapist that she thought she'd done something to make you leave." "I didn't know she was in therapy," he said quietly. "Of course you didn't," I said, "because you weren't here. You weren't paying attention. You weren't being a father." "I know," he said, and he started crying, actually crying, tears streaming down his face. "I know that. I've known it for years. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and my therapist has been trying to get me to come here and face what I did. And I kept putting it off because I was scared. I was scared of you, and I was scared of facing my own guilt. And I was a coward. Yes, I said, you were. You are. Morgan left me, he said, and the words came out in a rush. 6 months ago. She said I was emotionally unavailable and that I was broken and that she couldn't fix me. And she was right. She was completely right. I've spent the last 7 years running from my problems, and I finally ran out of places to hide. And I realized that I had to come back here. I had to see you, and I had to see Emma, and I had to try to make some kind of amends, even if it's too late. I stared at him. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction. He was suffering, and part of me was glad about that. But another part of me, the part that had loved him once, felt sad. Not for him, for the man he could have been if he'd just grown up. I want to pay back the child support, he said. All of it. $18,000. I've been saving. I'm working as a project manager for a tech company in Seattle, and I make decent money, and I want to pay it all back. That's nice, I said flatly. But that money doesn't fix what you broke. I know, he said. I know it doesn't. But I want to try. And I want to have a relationship with Emma and with Olivia. I want to know my daughters. No, I said. Ashley, no, I repeated, louder. You don't get to do that. You don't get to leave for 7 years and then show up and expect to slide back into their lives like you never left. Emma doesn't even remember you. She has no idea who you are except as the man who wasn't there. And I won't let you hurt her again. I'm their father, he said, and there was a note of desperation in his voice. You forfeited that right, I said. When you left, when you didn't pay support, when you didn't call or visit or send a Christmas present or anything. You made your choice, Brandon, and now you have to live with it. He stood there on my porch, looking absolutely broken, and I felt nothing. I'd expected to feel anger or vindication or something, but what I felt was just empty, tired. Like I'd already grieved this man a long time ago, and he was just a ghost showing up to remind me that he'd existed. I'm calling the police, I said. If you're not off my property in 5 minutes, I'm calling the police and telling them you're trespassing. He reached into his pocket, and I tensed, but he just pulled out an envelope. There's a check in here, he said, for the full $18,000. It's already signed. I want you to have it. I want you to use it for the girls, for their education or therapy or whatever they need. I didn't take the envelope. I just stared at him. I'm going to leave now, he said, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. And I know that doesn't matter. And I know I've lost the right to be their father, but I'm sorry anyway. He put the envelope on the porch railing and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, and then I picked up the envelope and went inside to find my daughters. I cashed that check. Linda helped me set up a 529 college savings plan for Emma and Olivia, and I deposited the full $18,000 into it. I never contacted Brandon to tell him I'd done it. He didn't reach out again. A week later, I had to sit down with Emma and tell her that the man she'd seen on the porch, the man she'd called Dada, wasn't going to be coming back. She asked a lot of questions, and I answered them as honestly as I could without making her hate him. I told her that sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes people aren't ready to be parents, and sometimes it's not about the child, it's about the adult being broken. She cried. My 7-year-old cried, and I held her, and I hated Brandon all over again for putting me in a position where I had to explain his failures to his own daughter. But I also made a decision that day. I decided I was done being angry. I was done waiting for him to come back and fix things, or apologize, or make it right. I was done letting him live rent-free in my head. I had 2 beautiful daughters who were thriving despite him, not because of him. I had a job that paid the bills. I had friends who showed up. I had a therapist who helped me process my trauma. I had a life that was genuinely good, even if it wasn't the life I'd planned. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that Brandon would spend the rest of his life knowing what he'd lost. That's the thing about abandoning your children. You don't get to take it back. You don't get to pretend it didn't happen. You have to carry that weight forever. So I let him carry it. Today, Emma is 12 and Olivia is 9. They're smart, funny, kind girls who are growing up into strong women. They know their father walked away, and they know it wasn't their fault. They're in therapy, and they're processing it in healthy ways. They have a college fund that's growing. They have a mother who loves them fiercely and would do anything to protect them. And they have a future that doesn't include a man who couldn't figure out how to be a father when he had the chance. I'm not going to lie and say I've forgiven Brandon. I haven't. I don't think I ever will. What he did was unforgivable. But I've made peace with the fact that his actions say nothing about who I am or what I'm worth. They say everything about who he is. And that's enough for me. Character count, 10,047.